The mop hit the floor with a wet slap as the janitor froze outside the principal's office, his knuckles white around the handle. Through the cracked door, he heard his daughter's name, followed by cruel laughter, the kind that cuts deeper than any blade ever could. Before we dive into this story of courage, corruption, and a father's unstoppable love, make sure to smash subscribe, because tomorrow we have an extra special story that will blow your mind. Marcus Hayes had been cleaning Westbrook Academy for 3 years, pushing his mop down the same gleaming hallways where his daughter Sophia walked with her head held high, despite wearing thrift store clothes among designer labels. He'd taken the job specifically for the employee tuition discount, the only way his brilliant 15-year-old could attend the prestigious private school. Every night, he traded his dignity for her future, enduring the turned-up noses and dismissive glances of parents who saw him as invisible, just part of the furniture. But Sophia? Sophia was extraordinary, with honey-colored hair that caught the light and eyes that sparkled with intelligence. She possessed a natural grace that no amount of money could buy. She was the kind of beautiful that came from within, confident despite their circumstances, kind despite the cruelty she faced, brilliant despite every obstacle life had thrown their way. That Thursday evening started like any other. Marcus was working his way through the administrative wing, the building nearly empty, except for a few teachers grading papers and the late meeting in Principal Morrison's office. The door was supposed to be closed, but the latch hadn't caught properly, a detail Marcus had been meaning to fix but hadn't gotten to yet. Now, as voices drifted into the hallway, he was grateful for that broken latch. The Hayes girl? Principal Morrison's voice carried that particular tone of disdain he reserved for scholarship students. Pretty little thing, I'll give you that. Shame she's too stupid to realize she doesn't belong here. Marcus's hand stilled on the mop handle. His jaw clenched so hard, his teeth ached. She scored highest on the entrance exam. A woman's voice, Mrs. Chen, the math teacher ventured carefully. Her grades are impeccable. Morrison's laugh was harsh. Grades can be adjusted. You think I'm going to let some janitor's brat make our donors' children look bad? The Pemberton boys' parents just pledged $50,000 to the new athletics complex. You think I care more about test scores or keeping our benefactors happy? The blood drained from Marcus's face. He'd suspected something when Sophia came home crying about her calculus test, the one she'd studied for weeks, only to receive a C, despite knowing she'd aced it. When she'd asked to see her exam paper, Mrs. Chen had claimed it was misplaced. You changed her grades? Mrs. Chen's voice shook. I did what was necessary, Morrison snapped. And you'll do the same, or you'll find yourself teaching at some public school in the Bronx. The Hayes girl needs to learn her place. These scholarship kids always do. Another voice chimed in, Mr. Garrett, the chemistry teacher. She asked about the science fair finals yesterday. Wants to know why her project on water purification wasn't selected when the judges gave it the highest preliminary scores. Tell her there was an error in tabulation, Morrison said smoothly. Give the spot to the Wellington girl instead. Her father owns 3 pharmaceutical companies. Much more appropriate, don't you think? Marcus's hands shook as he pulled out his phone, pressing record with trembling fingers. He positioned himself closer to the door, catching every word as the conversation continued. This is wrong, Mrs. Chen protested. Sophia earned those scores. She earned that science fair spot. You're destroying her future because her father's a janitor? I'm protecting this institution. Morrison's voice grew cold. Westbrook Academy has a reputation to maintain. We're grooming future leaders here, not charity cases. The girl's pretty enough. Maybe she'll marry well. That's the best someone like her can hope for anyway. You're disgusting, Mrs. Chen spat. And you're fired if you don't fall in line, Morrison replied. I've been doing this for 15 years. You think the Hayes girl is the first scholarship student I've had to manage? They come in here with their sob stories and their potential, but potential doesn't pay for new buildings or fund our programs. Money does, and money comes from families who expect their children to be at the top of every list. Marcus heard chairs scraping, the meeting breaking up. He quickly pushed his bucket around the corner, his heart hammering against his ribs. As footsteps echoed down the hallway, he kept his head down. Just another invisible janitor doing his job. But inside, rage burned like acid in his chest. That night, he sat at their small kitchen table watching Sophia do homework, her brow furrowed in concentration. She was working on her college application essays. writing about overcoming adversity, about how education was the key to breaking cycles. She had no idea that the very institution she trusted was actively working to keep her down. "Dad?" She looked up, catching his stare. "You okay?" Marcus forced a smile. "Just proud of you, baby girl." She grinned, and for a moment, she looked just like her mother, had radiant, hopeful, unstoppable. Elena had died when Sophia was 7, leaving Marcus to raise their daughter alone. On her deathbed, she'd made him promise to give Sophia every opportunity, every chance at a better life. "Mom would be proud too," Sophia said softly, as if reading his thoughts. "She would," Marcus agreed, his voice thick. "She absolutely would." The next morning, Marcus arrived at school early, his mind racing with plans. He needed more evidence, more proof. One recorded conversation might not be enough to bring down someone like Morrison, who had connections throughout the city's education system. He started paying closer attention, staying late, arriving early, positioning himself near important meetings. What he discovered made his stomach turn. Morrison's corruption ran deeper than grade manipulation. There were forged recommendation letters for wealthy students, SAT scores that mysteriously improved after generous donations, discipline records that vanished when the right parents complained. But it was what he overheard the following Wednesday that made his blood run cold. The Hayes girl submitted her early admission application to Princeton. Morrison was saying to his vice principal, "Miss Blackwell, intercept it. We'll send our own version instead, one that makes her look unstable, aggressive. Mention some fictional discipline issues. That should take care of that problem." Marcus's fist clenched so tight his nails bit into his palm. They weren't just suppressing Sophia's achievements, they were actively sabotaging her future. That evening, as he cleaned the cafeteria, Sophia found him. She often did her homework in the library until he finished his shift, and sometimes she'd help him with the lighter cleaning tasks. Tonight, she looked troubled. "Dad, something weird happened today," she said, picking up a spray bottle to help wipe down tables. "Remember that history paper I wrote about civil rights? The one Mr. Davis said was the best he'd read in years?" Marcus's heart sank. "What about it?" He handed it back today. C-. Said my analysis was superficial and my sources were inadequate. "But Dad, I used 12 primary sources. I spent 3 weeks on that paper." She tried to keep her voice steady, but Marcus could see the tears threatening to spill. His beautiful, brilliant daughter, who worked twice as hard as any student at Westbrook, only to be cut down by people who saw her as nothing more than a janitor's kid who didn't know her place. "It's not your fault," Marcus said quietly. "None of this is your fault." Sophia's face crumbled. "Then why does this keep happening? I study harder than anyone. I follow every rule. I'm respectful to everyone, even when they whisper about my clothes or ask if I'm the janitor's daughter, like it's something shameful. What am I doing wrong?" "Nothing," Marcus said firmly, pulling her into a hug. "You're doing nothing wrong, baby. The system is what's wrong." That night, Marcus made a decision. He'd gathered enough evidence, hours of recordings, photos of original tests versus the altered versions, documentation of every changed grade and fabricated disciplinary report. But he knew going through official channels would be useless. Morrison had too many connections, too many people who benefited from his corruption. Instead, he did something else. Something that would expose not just Morrison, but the entire rotten system that allowed men like him to flourish. What happens next will shake the very foundations of Westbrook Academy, reveal a web of lies that goes deeper than anyone imagined, and remind us why sometimes the quietest heroes are the ones who fight the hardest. Stay tuned to see what happens next. If you're enjoying the story, please like, share, and subscribe for more. The next morning, Marcus arrived at school before dawn. He had a plan risky, possibly career-ending, but he couldn't stand by and watch them destroy his daughter's dreams any longer. Using his master key, he entered the main office and located Sophia's file. What he found there made his hands shake with fury. Forged disciplinary reports, altered transcripts, and worst of all, a draft of the sabotaged Princeton recommendation letter waiting to be sent. He photographed everything, then moved to Morrison's personal office. The principal's computer was password protected, but Marcus had been invisible in these halls for 3 years, invisible enough to notice Morrison typing his password countless times, his expensive car's license plate number. The files Marcus found painted a picture of systemic corruption spanning Morrison's entire tenure. Spreadsheets tracking donations alongside grade changes. Email exchanges with wealthy parents negotiating their children's class rankings. A folder labeled Scholarship Adjustments containing detailed plans to suppress the achievements of students like Sophia. Marcus copied everything onto a USB drive, his janitor's uniform damp with nervous sweat. He was just closing the laptop when he heard footsteps in the outer office. Heart pounding, he slipped behind Morrison's large oak desk as the door opened. "I know someone's in here," Morrison's voice cut through the darkness. "Security cameras showed someone entering with a key. Come out now, and maybe we can discuss this like civilized people." Marcus stayed silent, calculating his options. The window behind him led to a 2-story drop. The only exit meant going through Morrison. "Mr. Hayes?" Morrison's voice turned amused. "Did you really think I didn't notice you lurking around playing detective? You're out of your league, janitor." Marcus stood slowly, the USB drive burning in his pocket. "My daughter trusted this school. Trusted you." Morrison flicked on the lights, his face a mask of contempt. "Your daughter is a distraction. A pretty distraction, I'll admit, but still just a poor kid who doesn't belong here. You think exposing some altered grades will change anything? I'll spin it as a misunderstanding. You'll be fired for breaking and entering. And Sophia? Well, she'll have to leave Westbrook immediately. Such a shame when parents commit crimes on school property. You destroyed her future because she's poor." Marcus's voice was deadly quiet. "Because she made your donors' kids look ordinary. I protected this institution's standards," Morrison sneered. "You sweep floors for a living, Hayes? You really think you can take me down? I have school board members in my pocket, judges who owe me favors. You're nothing." Marcus pulled out his phone, showing the recording app still running. "Maybe I'm nothing, but the truth isn't." Morrison's face went pale. "You recorded. How much did you?" "Everything," Marcus said. "Every dirty deal, every bribe, every time you crushed a kid's dreams to keep your wealthy parents happy. And it's already uploaded to the cloud, with copies sent to trusted friends. You fire me, you touch my daughter, and it all goes public." Morrison lunged for the phone, but Marcus had spent years hauling heavy equipment, building strength in his arms and back that the soft principal couldn't match. He sidestepped easily, letting Morrison crash into his own desk. "You're finished," Marcus said quietly. "But I'm going to give you a choice. Resign immediately, restore every grade you've altered, and write genuine recommendation letters for every student you've sabotaged. Or wake up tomorrow with your face on every news channel in the city." Morrison struggled to his feet, his perfect suit rumpled, his carefully styled hair in disarray. "You don't understand how things work. These parents, they'll destroy you. They'll make sure you never work in this city again." "I'm a janitor," Marcus said with a grim smile. "I can clean floors anywhere. But you? You can only be a corrupt principal once." The standoff lasted another tense moment before Morrison's shoulders slumped. He knew he was beaten. The evidence was too damning, the recordings too clear. "I need time," Morrison said weakly, "to put things in order." "You have until Monday," Marcus replied. "And Morrison, if you even think about retaliating against Sophia, I'll release everything anyway. With special emphasis on what you said about her being pretty enough to marry well. I wonder how that will play in the media." Marcus walked out of the office with his head high, leaving Morrison slumped in his leather chair, the weight of his crimes finally catching up to him. That weekend was the longest of Marcus's life. He didn't tell Sophia what he'd done, didn't want to burden her with the knowledge of how deeply the betrayal went. He simply watched her work on her college applications, her determination unshaken despite every obstacle placed in her path. Monday morning arrived with unexpected drama. Marcus and Sophia pulled into the school parking lot to find news vans everywhere, reporters clustering around the main entrance. Principal Morrison was being led out in handcuffs, his face a mask of shock and humiliation. "Dad, what's happening?" Sophia gasped. Before Marcus could answer, Mrs. Chin appeared at their car window. "Marcus! Sophia! I'm so glad you're here. The FBI raided the school this morning. Someone sent them extensive evidence of fraud, bribery, and corruption going back years. Morrison's been embezzling funds, taking bribes for admissions, and apparently selling grades to the highest bidder." Sophia's eyes went wide. But he seems so respectable." Mrs. Chin's expression softened. "Appearances can be deceiving, Sophia. The good news is that all altered records are being reviewed. Your real grades will be restored. Your Princeton application will be resubmitted with the glowing recommendations you actually deserve. As they walked toward the building, navigating through the chaos of reporters and police, Mrs. Chen pulled Marcus aside. "It was you, wasn't it? You're the one who exposed him." Marcus kept his expression neutral. "I'm just a janitor, Mrs. Chen. What would I know about such things?" She smiled knowingly. Just a janitor who loves his daughter enough to take down an empire. Inside the school, the atmosphere was electric. Students clustered in groups, sharing stories of grades they'd questioned, achievements that had mysteriously disappeared, punishments that had seemed unfairly harsh. The scholarship kids, the ones who'd been systematically held down, walked a little taller, smiled a little wider. At lunch, Sophia found Marcus in his usual spot, eating a sandwich in the maintenance room. She closed the door behind her and sat on an overturned bucket, studying his face. "It was you," she said quietly. It wasn't a question. Marcus met her eyes. "What makes you say that?" "Because you're my dad," she said simply. "Because you've been acting strange for weeks. Because every single scholarship kid who got screwed over is suddenly getting justice. And because," her voice broke slightly, "because you love me enough to risk everything." Marcus set down his sandwich, tears threatening. "I'm sorry you had to go through this, baby. I'm sorry the world is so unfair sometimes." Sophia launched herself into his arms, hugging him fiercely. "I'm not sorry. I'm proud. My dad, the janitor, just saved dozens of kids' futures. You're a hero." "I'm not a hero," Marcus protested. "I'm just a father who couldn't stand to see his daughter's light dimmed by small petty people." "That's exactly what a hero is," Sophia whispered. In the weeks that followed, the full extent of Morrison's corruption network came to light. 3 school board members resigned in disgrace. Several wealthy parents faced charges for bribing officials. The entire admissions process was overhauled, with new safeguards put in place to protect students from economic discrimination. Sophia's restored grades put her at the top of her class, exactly where she'd always belonged. Her Princeton application was accepted for early admission, with a full scholarship that would cover everything. The Science Fair Committee retroactively awarded her first place for her water purification project, which went on to win at the state level. But the biggest change came from the students themselves. The artificial barriers Morrison had erected between the wealthy kids and the scholarship students began to crumble. When everyone realized how they'd all been manipulated, the rich kids pushed ahead regardless of merit. The poor kids held back regardless of brilliance. A strange solidarity emerged. Tyler Pemberton, the boy whose parents had donated $50,000 to keep him ahead of Sophia, sought her out one afternoon. "I'm sorry," he said simply. "I knew something was off when I kept placing higher than you on tests. I should have said something." "You were just a kid too," Sophia replied graciously. "We all were. That's what made it so easy for them to manipulate us." The prom committee that year made an unprecedented decision. They nominated Marcus Hayes for honorary prom king, recognizing the quiet janitor who'd saved their futures. Marcus declined with characteristic humility, but the gesture meant everything. On graduation day, Sophia stood at the podium as valedictorian, her honey-colored hair shining under the lights, her thrift store dress somehow looking more elegant than all the designer gowns around her. She spoke about integrity, about the courage to stand up for what's right, about the heroes who walk among us in humble disguises. "My father taught me that dignity isn't about what you do for a living," she said, her voice clear and strong. "It's about how you do it. It's about maintaining your principles when everyone else has abandoned theirs. It's about protecting those who can't protect themselves, even when you risk everything in the process." Her eyes found Marcus in the crowd, standing in his janitor's uniform because he had to work right after the ceremony. "My dad cleans these halls every night, making them spotless for us to learn in. But this year, he did something more. He cleaned out the corruption that was poisoning our school. He reminded us that sometimes the most powerful person in the building isn't the one with the biggest office, but the one with the biggest heart." The applause started slowly, then built to a thunderous standing ovation. Not for Sophia, though she deserved it, but for Marcus, the invisible man who'd been seen, finally, for who he truly was. After the ceremony, as families took photos and celebrated, the new principal approached Marcus. Dr. Williams was everything. Morrison hadn't been honest, dedicated, focused on actual education rather than social climbing. "Mr. Hayes," she said warmly, "I've been reviewing your file. You have a bachelor's degree in engineering. You've been overqualified for your position for years." Marcus shrugged. The job gave Sophia access to education. That's all that mattered. "Well, we have an opening for a facilities manager, full benefits, better pay, regular hours. The position is yours if you want it." Marcus glanced at Sophia, who was taking photos with her friends, her smile radiant. "I appreciate the offer, Dr. Williams, but I've got a daughter heading to Princeton. Think I'll keep saving every penny for now. Besides," he smiled, "someone needs to keep these floors clean. You never know what conversations might need overhearing." Dr. Williams laughed. "Fair enough, but the offer stands whenever you're ready." That summer, as Sophia prepared for college, she and Marcus took long walks in the evening, talking about everything and nothing. She was nervous about Princeton, worried she wouldn't fit in among the truly wealthy students. "You belonged at Westbrook, even when they tried to push you out," Marcus reminded her. "You'll belong at Princeton because you earned it, and anyone who thinks differently will have to deal with my dad," Sophia finished with a grin. "I was going to say, we'll learn better," Marcus laughed. "I can't exactly go around recording Ivy League administrators." "Can't you, though?" Sophia teased. The night before she left for college, Sophia gave Marcus a wrapped present. Inside was a framed photo from graduation day, not one of the professional shots, but a candid moment caught by a friend. Marcus in his janitor's uniform, Sophia in her cap and gown, both laughing at something, their faces turned toward each other with identical expressions of joy and pride. Below the photo, she'd written, "To my dad, who taught me that heroes don't always wear capes. Sometimes they wear work boots and carry mops. Sometimes they stand in the shadows to protect those in the light. Thank you for being my hero, always." Marcus hugged his daughter tight, this beautiful, brilliant girl who'd survived every attempt to dim her light. "You've always been worth fighting for, baby girl, always." 5 years later, Sophia Hayes graduated from Princeton summa cum laude with a degree in biochemistry and a full scholarship to medical school. At her graduation party, held in the Westbrook Academy Gymnasium, Dr. Williams had insisted, a surprising number of her former classmates showed up. Many told similar stories, how the grade restoration had changed their trajectories, how the exposure of corruption had taught them to question systems that seemed designed to keep people in boxes. Several were heading to graduate school, to careers they'd been told weren't for people like them. Marcus, now facilities manager and still keeping the floors immaculately clean, watched from the sidelines as his daughter worked the room, encouraging younger students, sharing advice, being the mentor she'd never had. Mrs. Chin approached him, holding a cup of punch. "You know, I never properly thanked you." "For what?" Marcus asked. "For reminding me why I became a teacher. I'd gotten so beaten down by the system, I'd almost given up. But watching you fight for Sophia, seeing you refuse to accept injustice, it reminded me that we're supposed to be advocates for these kids, not obstacles." She paused, then added, "Sophia's going to make an amazing doctor, but she got her healing spirit from you. You fixed more than grades, Marcus. You fixed a broken system, one act of courage at a time." As the party wound down, Sophia found her father exactly where she expected, quietly cleaning up, making sure everything was perfect for the next day's classes. "Some things never change," she said fondly. Marcus smiled. "Some things shouldn't. Honest work is still honest work, whether you're mopping floors or running a hospital." "Speaking of hospitals," Sophia said, pulling out an envelope, "I got my residency match. Johns Hopkins. They want me for their pediatric program." Marcus's face lit up. "Baby girl, that's incredible." "There's more," Sophia said, her eyes twinkling. "They have a community clinic program for kids whose parents can't afford regular health care, kids who might get overlooked or pushed aside because they don't have the right insurance or the right address." She took his hands in hers. "I'm going to make sure no child ever feels less than because of where they come from. That's the legacy you gave me, Dad. Not just the courage to stand up, but the reminder to look down to see who's being stepped on and help them rise." Marcus pulled his daughter into a fierce hug. This woman who'd grown from a girl doing homework in empty classrooms to a doctor who would change lives. "Your mom would be so proud," he whispered. "She is," Sophia whispered back. "And so am I. proud to be the janitor's daughter who exposed corruption not with connections or wealth, but with truth. Proud to be the daughter of a man who understood that real power isn't in the office you hold, but in the lives you lift. As they stood there in the gymnasium where it all began, Marcus thought about that night years ago when he'd stood frozen outside Morrison's office, mop in hand, listening to them mock his daughter. He'd had a choice, then stay invisible or step into the light. He'd chosen to fight, not with violence or anger, but with truth and persistence. He'd chosen to show his daughter that dignity wasn't about accepting your place, but about refusing to let anyone else define it for you. Looking at Sophia now, Dr. Sophia Hayes, soon to be, he knew every risk had been worth it. Every moment of fear, every threat, every sleepless night had led to this. A woman who would spend her life making sure no child was ever dismissed as just anything. The janitor who'd exposed corruption hadn't just saved his daughter's future. He'd lit a torch that would burn for generations, carried by every student who learned that their worth wasn't determined by their parents' bank accounts, but by their own courage, brilliance, and heart. And in Westbrook Academy's halls, now genuinely clean of more than just dirt, Marcus Hayes continued his work, still invisible to some, but a hero to those who understood that sometimes the greatest battles are fought not with swords or speeches, but with mops and determination and a father's unstoppable love. That's the power of standing up for what's right, even when you're just a janitor. That's the power of refusing to let anyone dim your light or your daughter's. That's the power of love that says, "That's my daughter you're mocking, and I'll move heaven and earth to protect her dreams." If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that heroes come in all uniforms and that standing up for justice is everyone's responsibility, then please like and subscribe. Click on one of the 2 stories on your screen right now for another powerful tale that will inspire you to stand up, speak out, and never let anyone tell you or your loved ones that you're just anything. Remember, sometimes the quietest person in the room has the loudest impact. Sometimes the invisible become the most visible heroes, and sometimes a father's love is the most powerful force for change in the world.